On a bright Los Angeles afternoon, a billionaire's son stopped his luxury car beside a homeless man holding a broken guitar. "Play something," he mocked, tossing a coin. "If you're really that good, I'll buy you a car." The man smiled quietly, lifted the guitar, and within minutes, the entire street went silent because what he played wasn't music. It was truth. Los Angeles never slept. It only paused to change moods, from gold sunlight to neon nights. At the corner of Sunset Boulevard, under a flickering billboard advertising luxury watches, a man sat on a sidewalk. His name was Malcolm Reed. He was in his late 40s, skin marked by sun and time, beard streaked with gray, hands calloused from both survival and music. His guitar looked older than some of the buildings around him, half splintered, taped at the neck, but still holding a sound that could move hearts. People passed him daily, too busy to notice the beauty living in broken strings, except for the small crowd that always gathered when he played. They didn't know his name, but they knew his sound. He called it truth in six strings. Every evening, he played at the same spot, a cracked concrete corner across from a high-end car dealership. It was ironic, almost poetic, luxury shining across the street, and pain creating art right in front of it. That afternoon, as sunlight burned through smog, Malcolm began playing an old blues tune. Something deep, something raw, something that whispered stories of love, loss, and life forgotten. A little girl stood near him, tugging her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, why does it look sad when he plays?" The mother smiled faintly. "Because, sweetheart, he's remembering." Malcolm smiled at the child, still strumming, voice soft but powerful. "Don't cry for what you've lost. Play for what you still have." The girl clapped. A few people tossed coins into his case. And across the street, a red luxury car rolled up to a stop. Inside the car sat Ethan Cole, son of the billionaire Cole Motors founder. Tall, mid-30s, perfectly dressed, sunglasses reflecting the street like a movie lens. He had everything, money, fame, parties, yet felt nothing. He had just left a high-end music studio after a failed signing deal. "They said my music lacks soul," he muttered, gripping the steering wheel. That's when he heard it, the blues echoing from the street corner. It wasn't polished. It wasn't rehearsed, but it was alive. The raw sound pulled at him, something he hadn't felt since his father died. He parked his car right in front of a crowd. People turned. The air thickened with curiosity. Ethan stepped out, his shoes hitting the pavement like power meeting poverty. Ethan walked over to Malcolm, arms folded, smirking. "Nice guitar," he said sarcastically. "Looks like it survived the apocalypse." Malcolm chuckled softly. "It has. Every day is the end of something." The crowd laughed lightly. Ethan didn't. He held up his car keys, the sunlight flashing off the metal. "Tell you what," he said. "Play me something that actually moves me, and I'll give you this car." The crowd gasped. Malcolm looked up, eyes calm, voice steady. "You don't have to insult what you don't understand." Ethan smirked. "I'm not insulting you. I'm testing you." Malcolm studied him, the arrogance, the emptiness behind it, and then slowly nodded. "You're on." He placed his fingers on the strings and closed his eyes. At first, it was a whisper, then a storm. Notes climbed the air like prayers rising to heaven. Every vibration carried pain, memory, and forgiveness. People stopped walking. Drivers pulled over. Even the wind seemed to wait. Ethan froze, hands still holding the keys. The melody was too pure, too human. It wasn't just music. It was confession. Malcolm sang, rough but golden. "You can buy a house, but never a home. You can own the road, but walk it alone." Tears welled in a stranger's eyes. A delivery man stopped mid-ride, removing his cap. The city, for the first time, was silent when Malcolm finished. He didn't look up. He simply rested his hands and whispered, "Music isn't played to be sold. It's played to be heard." Ethan swallowed hard. For once, his voice trembled. Who are you?" Malcolm smiled faintly. "Just a man who remembers what sound feels like." And before Ethan could respond, a crowd began clapping, a roar of raw admiration that echoed down the boulevard. The air's arrogance cracked that day, but the story was just beginning. The crowd eventually dispersed, but Ethan Cole stood frozen beside his red car. His chest felt heavy, not from humiliation, but realization. That homeless man played like no one he'd ever heard. It wasn't perfection. It was pain turned into poetry. He took a deep breath and turned back toward the dealership. But the sound of that voice, rough yet sacred, wouldn't leave his mind. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in his penthouse suite, city lights glowing beneath the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything gleamed, except him. He kept replaying the scene. Malcolm's cracked hand on guitar, the tremble in his voice when he said, "Music isn't played to be sold. It's played to be heard." No one had ever spoken to him like that, without fear, without interest, without flattery. By 3 a.m., Ethan sat up muttering, "Who the hell was that guy?" The next morning, He returned to that same corner, but Malcolm was gone. All that remained was a folded flyer for a community shelter a few blocks away. Ethan drove there, still wearing his designer suit, sticking out like a gold coin in a pile of dust. The receptionist, an older woman, looked him up and down. "You're lost, sweetheart?" "I'm looking for someone," Ethan said, showing a photo he'd snapped discreetly of Malcolm performing. "Name's Malcolm Reed. He plays guitar outside the car lot." The woman's eyes softened. "Oh, Malcolm. Yeah, he comes by sometimes. Good soul. Keeps to himself. Used to be somebody once." Ethan frowned. "Used to be?" The woman nodded. "Word is, he played with the greats before life hit him hard." That led Ethan to a small, dusty music shop in South Central LA. Old records lined the walls, each one whispering history. An elderly man sat behind the counter, eyes tired but sharp. Ethan showed the picture again. "Ever seen him?" The shopkeeper leaned forward, squinting. Then his eyebrows shot up. "Boy, that's Malcolm Reed." Ethan's heart jumped. "You know him?" The man nodded slowly. "Knew him. Everyone did, before the world forgot. He was a prodigy, played with the Silver Keys, used to fill jazz clubs back in the early 2000s. Ethan blinked. "Then why is he—" The man sighed. "His wife died. Label dropped him. He disappeared. Music business don't have mercy, kid. It takes souls and sells them." He pointed to a framed photo on the wall, a young Malcolm on stage, eyes closed, lost in music. Next to him, the same guitar before it was broken. Ethan stared at it like he'd seen a ghost. The man continued. He could have been the next legend. But grief, it can silence even the loudest heart. Ethan left the shop, shaken. The LA sun hit him hard, too bright, too real. All his life, he'd mocked struggle. Now he saw what it meant to lose everything and still find something beautiful to give. He drove aimlessly through the city until he found himself near a street cafe. Sitting outside, he watched a group of musicians playing for tips, just like Malcolm. But none of them had that same depth, that raw soul. He whispered to himself. He didn't just play music, he played truth. 2 nights later, Ethan finally found him again. Same corner, same broken guitar, same quiet crowd. Malcolm was tuning his strings when Ethan approached. He looked up, recognizing the man in the light blue shirt. "Back for another lesson, son?" Malcolm asked, half smiling. Ethan chuckled softly. Something like that. "You disappeared on me." "I don't stay where people come to stare," Malcolm replied, strumming softly. Ethan hesitated. "Listen, I found out who you are. Who you were. You were a legend, man." Malcolm shrugged. "I was a name once. That and a bus ticket won't get me dinner." Ethan sat down on the pavement beside him, ignoring the stares of passers-by. For the first time in his life, he wanted to learn, not lead. He spoke quietly. "Teach me what you know. About music. About soul." Malcolm chuckled. "You can't learn that from lessons." "Then how?" Ethan asked. Malcolm plucked one slow note. "By listening not to sound but to silence." Ethan frowned. "That makes no sense." "It will," Malcolm said, smiling faintly, "when you stop playing for applause." For hours, they sat together, Malcolm showing him chord shapes, rhythm patterns, but mostly silence between notes. "Music breathes, son," Malcolm said softly. "If you don't let it breathe, it dies." As he played, the street lights glowed warmer. Cars passed slower, and even the city noise seemed to blend into the melody. People threw coins again, some clapping. But this time, Ethan wasn't watching them. He was watching Malcolm, a man who had lost everything, yet still gave more than anyone else as they packed up. Ethan asked carefully, "You ever think about going back? Performing again?" Malcolm smiled sadly. "Sometimes. But music doesn't belong to fame. It belongs to whoever listens." He stood, putting the old guitar in its worn case. "I've already had my spotlight. Now I just share the light that's left." Ethan nodded slowly, deeply moved. But before he could say more, Malcolm handed him something, a torn CD hand-labeled. Before the silence, Malcolm Reed. "Keep it," he said. "Remind yourself what real music sounds like." Ethan turned the CD over, speechless. There, in faded marker, was the same handwriting as on a record his father once owned. His father, who used to play Malcolm Reed every Sunday morning. Ethan's throat tightened. That meant this man, this street musician, once inspired his father, the man who built his family's empire. Fate wasn't random. It was poetic. Ethan offered Malcolm a ride. Malcolm refused. "I'm fine right here, son. The streets still got stories to tell." Ethan nodded, guilt and all mixing in his chest. As he got into his car, he whispered, "Then I'll make sure the world hears him again." Malcolm smiled, a quiet, proud smile that said he understood. That night, Ethan didn't go home. He drove straight to his studio. He listened to the CD. The sound was raw, unedited, pure, like sunlight trapped in sound. He picked up his own guitar and began to play, but not as Ethan Cole, the rich heir. He played as a man who'd finally found purpose. He played until dawn. And as morning light crept through the studio windows, he whispered, "Tomorrow, I'll bring him back to where he belongs." Morning sunlight poured over the Hollywood hills like melted gold. Los Angeles was awake, loud, busy, restless. But in one small recording studio on Melrose Avenue, there was silence, not emptiness, anticipation. Ethan Cole sat at the console, eyes heavy but focused. All night, he'd been mixing Malcolm's old recordings, repairing the crackles, restoring the soul. Now, with each playback, he heard something new. Not just music, but meaning. Don't cry for what you lost. Play for what you still have. Malcolm's voice echoed like a ghost across the speakers. Ethan closed his eyes. He knew what he had to do next. He wouldn't just repay Malcolm with money or gifts. He would give him back his name. The next day, Ethan returned to that same street corner, the one where everything began. Malcolm was there, tuning his battered guitar, humming softly. The same small crowd had gathered again. People who didn't know they were in the presence of a living legend. Ethan stepped out of his car, not in a suit this time, but in jeans and a simple shirt. He approached with a quiet smile. "Morning, Mr. Reed." Malcolm looked up, amused. "You look different, son. What happened to your fancy clothes?" Ethan chuckled. "They were too loud. I decided to wear something that lets me listen." Malcolm nodded approvingly. "Good choice." Then Ethan held up a white envelope. "Inside this is a contract, not for money but for freedom." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. "Freedom?" Ethan smiled. "I booked a stage at the Blue Room Theater, one of the biggest live music halls in L.A. They're doing a benefit night for homeless artists. And I told them the main performer will be Malcolm Reed." The old man froze. For a second, he looked unsure if it was a cruel joke. "You serious?" Ethan nodded. "More than I've ever been about anything." 2 weeks later, the Blue Room Theater overflowed. Hundreds of people, journalists, musicians, fans, all waiting to hear the man whose music had vanished for 20 years. Backstage, Malcolm sat quietly, staring at the old guitar on his lap, the same one that had carried him through both glory and grief. Ethan entered, dressed in black, calm but excited. "You ready?" Malcolm smiled faintly. "I don't think anyone's ever ready for their second chance. They just play through it." Ethan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then play through it. I'll be right beside you." Musical notes the first note. When the curtains opened, silence swept the crowd. A single spotlight bathed Malcolm in golden light. He sat down, touched the strings, and paused. His fingers trembled. The room waited. Then he began. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't fast. It was real. Each chord carried years of pain and love, and every ear in that room felt it. Ethan joined with an electric guitar, blending the new with the old, the rich with the forgotten, until the music became something divine. The crowd began to cry. Grown men, hardened reporters, strangers, all feeling the same ache. When the last note faded, Malcolm whispered into the mic, "Music is a language the soul never forgets." The crowd erupted in a standing ovation that lasted minutes. And in the front row, the same little girl from the street corner, now holding her mother's hand, whispered, "Mommy, that's him." Her mother smiled. "Yes, sweetheart, that's the man who remembers." After the concert, Ethan found Malcolm backstage, tears glimmering in his eyes. "I thought I was forgotten," Malcolm said softly. Ethan shook his head. "Legends don't die. They just wait for the world to listen again." Malcolm smiled, then reached into his guitar case and pulled out a folded envelope. "What's this?" Ethan asked. "Something I never got to send," Malcolm said. "It's for your father." Ethan froze. Malcolm continued. "Years ago, your dad used to come to my shows. He once told me I inspired him to start his company, that my music taught him patience. I wanted to thank him, but then he passed before I could." Ethan took the letter, trembling. It was dated 1999. Tears blurred his eyes. "My dad always said he learned everything about business from music. He said rhythm is life." Malcolm chuckled. "Smart man." Ethan hugged him tightly. "Thank you for reminding me who he was and who I can still be." A large crowd gathered outside a new cafe in downtown Los Angeles. The sign above the door read, "Musical Note reads Harmony House Musical Note, where music finds its way home." Inside, the walls were covered with photos of struggling street performers, each with a story, a name, a melody. At the center sat Malcolm, now healthy, smiling, playing his guitar for children learning music for the first time. And right beside him, Ethan Cole, managing the foundation that now funded music lessons for underprivileged youth. A journalist asked Ethan during the opening, "Why start this project?" Ethan smiled at Malcolm and replied, "Because the man you see there reminded me You don't measure success by what you own, but by how much of yourself you give away. As the evening faded, Malcolm strummed one last song, a simple lullaby written in memory of his late wife. Ethan sat quietly, eyes closed, letting the music speak. Across the city, as lights flickered and traffic roared, the sound drifted like prayer. Malcolm looked up at the stars and whispered, "Thank you for letting me play again." And somewhere deep in the city, a new generation stopped to listen, because in the heart of Los Angeles, a man who lost everything reminded the world that music is mercy and grace can live in broken strings.